Welcome back to the Farm Show on Westplex Talk 1045, broadcasting from beautiful St. Charles County, Missouri, into St. Charles County, West St. Louis County, Eastern Warren County, and Franklin County. It is Saturday, January 17th, 2026. 2 weeks ago on the Farm Show, we featured a primer on cover crops that came to us from the University of Missouri Agricultural Experiment Station. You can find those folks at University of Missouri Agricultural Experiment Station on YouTube. Tim Reinbott sat down with host William Lee to discuss Reinbott's long career in cover crops. And you can go back and listen to the highlights of part 1 of that discussion on our YouTube channel at Farm Show Radio on YouTube. That was a good big picture discussion of where to get started in cover crops. We're going to focus today on part 2 of the discussion between Tim and William and really cherry pick a few more of the highlights from their long, detailed video. And again, follow along, hear the whole interview by going to the University of Missouri Agricultural Experiment Station on YouTube. The guys started part 2 of the discussion when William asked about what the exact recommended mix is, and Tim gave some timing advice when planting any cover crop from the brassica family, and also a few more tips. Have a listen.
You know, on timing, the brassicas, you mentioned the radishes, or you got turnips. Remember, when you plant those for yourself, in your home garden here in Missouri, you're planting those in August because they do good. They come up, they grow, and they will winter kill about December, sometime in December. But if you wait till after harvest of your corn or soybeans, you're going to be disappointed in their growth because you've really cut it down because they already are going to grow to a hard
frost.
Hard frost, killing frost. So you need to get all that growth that you can. So they're great for overseeding in August. You know, we talked about the drones or whatever to do that. That would be the brassicas. I would do that, and you can do the other ones too. Oats is another one, especially if you want to plant spring oats in the summer. You get all that growth, and it also winter kill. If whatever your priorities are.
Tim says crimson clover tends to outperform expectations, and it's part of his favorite mix.
I think it starts, you got to have a cereal crop.
A cereal, okay.
And that can be wheat, as we mentioned before. It could be cereal rye. It could be triticale, oats, barley, just whatever you want to put on there. And they all have their specific reasons and drawbacks. But you got to start with that.
Okay.
Now, if you're going to let the cover crop do its thing, you're going to let that legume that you plant in there actually get some growth to it and fix some nitrogen, then put it in there. Put your crimson clover or your hairy vetch or your Austrian winter peas or whatever you want to put in there. But if you're going to be terminating fairly soon, planting early and even terminating, even after they come up, you're still talking about mid-April or so. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't waste my money on the legumes.
On the legume side.
I really wouldn't.
Because they just haven't had the time to do anything.
Right. They're not going to fix any nitrogen.
Okay.
Even though they're there growing, they're probably scavenging more nitrogen than what they're doing. And your cereal crop can do that too. Can scavenge nitrogen.
Can sequester it.
Yeah. So it's doing that too. And now if you're going to wait till later, we have found our cereal crop with either hairy vetch or crimson clover does the best. I'm always amazed with that because crimson clover doesn't have the biomass that hairy vetch does. But you look at the yields, and the yields don't lie. That's where we've gotten some of our best yields from. Is our cereal crop plus crimson clover.
Tim calls out the major problem with cereal rye, particularly as it relates to corn.
When I was a little boy, that was a big weed in our wheat because we use cereal rye as a cover crop for grazing. It's a great grazer. It didn't have the protein that wheat does, but it's quick establishing. It has a lot of biomass, so it's great for grazing. but also it can get into your wheat seed, you know. So we always had that little bit of an issue with that. But there's the big drawback on cereal rye is that it does produce an allelopathy.
Okay.
It does produce chemicals that keep other plants from growing.
And that's a drawback, Tim. I would think that'd help my weed control problems.
Well, it does. It does help, but one of the things it likes to hurt is other grasses, especially like corn. And we have seen that the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we'll see that yield drag from cereal rye onto our corn. And some of that's anti-up, we get that.
Okay.
But some of it is also this allelopathy that we have. Now, to get around that, we can use triticale
Okay.
or wheat.
Or wheat.
Triticale has a lot of the good characteristics of cereal rye and wheat. It's a great grazer, like wheat is, and cereal rye, but it doesn't have the allelopathies as a cereal rye. But it costs more. Seed costs more.
From there, William asked about biomass differences among cover crops, and Tim explains how his own thinking has come along in terms of biomass versus roots.
You get most of the biomass with triticale.
Okay.
It's a little slower, but now you don't get as much with the wheat. It's not quite as much biomass, and it's not as fast. But we're finding out that I don't know if we need as much biomass as we think. I'm starting to change. I used to say, man, I want as much biomass as I can because I want to help control weeds. I want to feed the soil microbes, but I think the soil microbiology is feeding on the roots.
Okay, the roots is the main supporting tool.
It really is. It really is. And surprisingly, some of our colleagues at the Danforth Center were telling me just a few weeks ago that even in the fall, our cereal rye roots are getting 3 feet to 4 feet deep.
Man.
That
Get down
fast.
there.
So you may only see 3 or 4 inches of growth, but there's a bunch of it down below.
If you're just joining us, we're playing a few highlights from a conversation from University of Missouri folks around cover crops. You can find this entire discussion by going to YouTube and looking up the University of Missouri Agricultural Experiment Station, the conversation between Tim Reinbott and William Lee. Tim shared a few pitfalls from his experiences early on in terms of planting into biomass.
Yeah, we looked at termination times on our cover crops in both with corn and with soybeans, and we go from either a month before we plant to 2 weeks before to right when we plant them to 2 weeks after, and we found that really it's that right before planting is the best. That we give up some tonnage, but that seems to be optimum because I think that part of that is getting that good seed to soil contact. I think even though we're planting green, we're also getting a lot more of a wild mess out there that we may have to that may impede our planter just a little bit.
Our planter, or are we going to impede our plant growth? I mean, because more biomass, we have more shade now for the weeds, but also for our trying to establish crop, or whether it be corn or soybeans or anything.
Yeah, I've seen them get elated a little bit.
Yes.
Or sometimes you think, how can the crop come up through that? But it really does.
It really does. And has there been a major yield drag that you've seen in some data with having such massive amounts of biomass before we terminate and then plant?
When I've seen it, it's because of planter operator error.
Planter operator error. Okay.
Not getting the planter set right, not paying attention. You're planting a little more complex system.
Okay.
So you do have to watch some things, and I think that's where I've got the biggest issues from.
From there, the guys discussed equipment specifics, and then Tim called out one of the considerations about cover crops that have lots of biomass and what it might mean when you're dealing with spring rains.
Depth is an easy one. I made a mistake one time. I set it, I think I was planting soybeans, about 1.5 inches. I was good, went and planted, and I got into a field that I've been having cover crops on for 12 or 13 years, and I planted that 3.5 inches because that soil was so loose it just went deeper.
Went deeper, huh?
And
with the same setting.
Same setting, yes. So make sure you watch that, or if you have a planter that can adjust for that, that pressure for that. Then the other thing is you get a lot of biomass out there. It can catch on your double disc openers.
Okay.
And you start pushing.
Yes.
You got to watch for that sometimes, especially if you get the mixtures with the hairy vetch and some of the other ones that can really start making some issues out there. So that's what we found out. You've really got to watch it just a little bit closer.
Okay.
We've planted a lot with a 40-year-old John Deere planter that had good, sharp double disc openers on them.
Sharp double disc openers. Well, Shirley, we had a no-till culture there, didn't we?
We took that off a long time ago. We took because what we found was that that culture takes half the weight of the planter with it.
Takes half the weight.
And so when we're trying to go through this heavy residue, we're just spreading that weight out so much that we took the culture off and just let that double disc opener do its thing. And we've gotten some great depth control and seed to soil contact if we get everything set right.
So our no-till culture was robbing downforce.
It was. It really was.
Double disc openers and all spreading that weight out. And so we took that off, and now we have more. Because in times, heck, even in dry conditions, we need all the downforce we can get in more just to get the planter in the ground. Has that been an issue? Have we had to really find creative ways to get more downforce? Or
well, we're managing water.
Okay.
And a few years ago, we had such a dry spring, and we were trying to plant into some alfalfa, some killed alfalfa and red clover, and we had a hard time getting it in there. It just wouldn't go in.
Just so dry.
It was so dry, and that's usually more on the unusual.
Yes, on the extreme.
On the extreme. Now, that's the thing about if you let a cover crop get large and then kill it before you plant, the problem you can get, now your source of water extraction is gone, but your source of keeping water on your soil is there.
Is there our cover?
So,
Shade.
So if it's big, you kill it, and then you get big rain, and you may not get back in the field for a long time. So that's why I like to plant it and then kill it.
William noted that a lot of big corporations are paying farmers in the name of carbon sequestration. What has Tim seen?
When we plant green, corn or soybeans, we can tell the carbon content's greater that summer and a little bit the next spring.
Okay.
When we terminate earlier than that, like 2 weeks ahead of time or whatever, we don't see it at all. As a matter of fact, even our soil biology and whatever, by midsummer, you can't even tell that you had a cover crop.
Is that just the lack of root growth that we had? Because that's the major way we sequester is the root turnover, correct?
Right. You just have it. Even though you got a lot of roots there early, depth-wise, as far as a mass of roots, you just don't have unless you let it go a bit longer. But here in the lower Midwest and probably south of us, I really don't think you see the carbon build up with cover crops as you may see in the north part of the Midwest. We're warmer. It stays warmer longer into the season. It warms up earlier. It gets warmer, and that burns a lot of our carbon up. So we don't see it as much. It can maintain us. It can maintain our carbon.
Yes,
but we're not burning it up. Now, but we're not building up very fast. What we have seen, though, if you have a longer rotation that has a perennial in it, like that red clover or alfalfa that we were trying to terminate and kill, then you see that really giving you a big build up, and the cover crops can maintain that.
William asked Tim, in a crop like corn, if you have a bigger presence of carbon, do you need more nitrogen?
Yes, and that's, farmers would tell us that. They told us that. So, well, I don't have a problem because I put down 60 pounds in as I plant.
Yes.
So that biomass, that cover crop biomass with lots of cereal crop in it, it's going to tie a lot of nitrogen up, and then your corn crop or your sorghum crop will starve for nitrogen those first month or so, or 3 or 4 weeks, and that makes a difference all year. So putting some down as you plant can offset a lot of that.
And offset some of the negative effects.
Right.
Do we ever graduate out of negative effects with the continuous use of cover crops versus year 1 versus year 6 or 10? Or do we always have to kind of maintain, say, that extra nitrogen use?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do see that after about year 4, we don't see the impact of cereal rye negative on our corn.
Interesting.
So I think we are building up our biology, our turnover of nutrients so we don't see as much of it. But I think the first 4 or 5 years, yes. After that, I don't believe that they have to anymore.
What does Tim think about managing cover crops in a drought situation?
If it's dry, you say, well, I'm going to kill my cover crop. But boy, if it rains, you could be in trouble that way. And we have seen it before, the data, where we have soil sensors out there for moisture that, sure, in May, when the cover crop was growing before we killed it, we have less soil water in that top. But then by midsummer, it's flipped because more soaking in. When we do get rainfalls, we are getting more soaked in. But we do have those years sometimes that it is dry, and my suggestion would be let's get things planted.
Get planted.
Get your crop planted and then terminate it.
Right. Well, heck, that goes back to, well, if you tell me what the weather's going to do this
exactly.
next year, I'll tell you exactly how to do it.
Right. And you can't get anything planted all the same day either.
Right.
So that starts getting into some issues. But, even that year when we ran into issues planting into the alfalfa or the dead red clover, we had no problem getting up in the cover crop. We still had the moisture to get it up there. It was just that perennial crop had taken so much out.
Right.
So that was a little bit different. So really on cover crops, I've always got a stand up, even when it's been dry.
And before we go, we'll play one more exchange. William says that he hears from producers, hey, I know cover crop experiments work in small groups on a research plot, but they won't work on my farm. What has Tim seen in that regard?
I always like driving around the countryside in the fall, and you can see a lot of cover crops planted, and then you can see them that next spring too.
Right.
So yes, it is being adopted on larger acres,
large scale, and utilized.
But you've got to be able to manage it. You start small, start simple.
Yes.
And like we talked about, planting things that terminate in the wintertime first, or if you do go with a crop, go with something that you don't have a lot of money invested in it yet, until you start figuring out how you really want to manage them.
That was Tim Reinbott and William Lee from the University of Missouri. You can find them at the University of Missouri Agricultural Experiment Station on YouTube. Thank you for joining us this week on The Farm Show. That's Farm and Ranch, Missouri. We'll see you right back here on Westplex Talk 104.5 next Saturday at 10 a.m.